My guest today is Kent Oliver, the library director for Metro. Kent, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Oh, it's great to be here.
So
rainy Saturday morning.
Well, it's warm outside, so
yeah.
I may go out and run after this is over, depending on whether you exhaust me or not. I'm going to try to get some energy. And before we fully get started, I was talking to you before about your backdrop. So what is that? And is there anything interesting back there? There's a lot of, Kansas, String City, you got a lot of it. And there's Jackie Robinson, you got a bunch of stuff.
And I'll confess, this is my virtual backdrop, but it's a picture of my office. And if I were doing live in my office, this is what you'd be seeing. You've got a poster of the band Kansas there. Then next to that, you have String City, which is our Wishing Chair puppet group's production of the history of country music, one of our collaborations with the Hall. You have a Liberty Bell Award up there that I received when I was in Canton, Ohio. And then the History Matters, that's actually a poster of Jackie Robinson. I was fortunate one year when I was in Atlanta at a library meeting that I got to sit next to his daughter, Miriam, for an entire Atlanta Braves game. And
wow.
So
what a great poster. That's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, so
and tell me about the Liberty Bell. Did you?
Actually, I see Margaret Bem is on this call. Margaret and Jeannie Nelson and Julie Mosley just won the Liberty Bell Award here in Nashville this year for their for coming up with the idea and pushing forward the Votes for Women room.
Oh, okay.
And
very cool. Well, we're going to talk about that in just a minute because I will tell you that I think there's a number of people. We had Carol Busey on this Zoom call a couple of weeks ago, and there was so much interest in the history of Nashville, and she did such a good job that they invited her back. So we're going to get her back, but we were thinking about there is so many interesting things in the library system here that we thought we'd talk about it today. So so get ready. So welcome everybody. It's a little bit after 10. Thank you all for joining us. It is the holiday season. We're on I think the 4th day of Hanukkah, and the Christmas holiday is right around the corner. And there's the holidays are here. I'm wishing everybody a safe and healthy holiday. And with the numbers of COVID all around us, I hope everybody is very safe and very healthy. We got the latest number: 614 new cases of COVID from yesterday, 5 additional deaths. Ken, it seems like we were talking before. It seems like it's getting closer and closer. We know more and more people that have had it or have it right now. And I'm just asking everyone to be very careful, be very safe. You can say that maybe the light is at the end of the tunnel. FDA approved the first set of vaccines yesterday or last night, so they're on their way out. But we still got a ways to go, so everybody just needs to be careful. I've got Councilmember Tanya Hancock is on. Councilmember Hancock, thanks for being on. And we are ready to go. So Kent Oliver, the library director from Metro, we are glad to have you on the call. So for those of you who don't know you, Kent, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from, and how did you get to be the library director at our Metro system?
Okay, I'm originally from Kansas, from Topeka, Kansas, and I've worked in libraries in Kansas and Missouri. And prior to coming to Nashville, I was director of Stark County in Canton, Ohio. If you're familiar with Ohio, that's in the Canton-Akron area, just south of Cleveland. I was there for 11 years. And then I was fortunate enough to be selected during a national search for the Nashville Public Library position. And I've been here, time goes, but I'm in my 9th year now here in Nashville. So it's pretty exciting, but I've worked in libraries my entire life and been involved with the American Library Association and leadership roles there. And I'm so happy to still be here. And you can call them challenging times, but they're certainly exciting times too. And you bring all of your experience to bear when you're trying to work through these kind of situations.
Well, I know it's obviously it hadn't been easy for anybody, and you included. This is challenging and an interesting time. So Canton, Ohio, home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
Absolutely. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So are you in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Did you?
No, I'm not, but it was a lot of fun being able to attend the enshrinements while I was there and all the festivities that go on. People outside of that area don't know that, like we have the country music fest here in June normally. Well, there's a whole week of activities that goes on around the Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrinement. So, and it's fun.
Well, I've never been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I've been to the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And I've been to the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And I will tell you a short story about the Basketball Hall of Fame. I went with my younger brother, who's a basketball coach, and they had a little section where they had different old style of basketball goals, and you could take basketballs and shoot, and they were recording how many were made. But the way it was supposed to work was that there was kind of a moving sidewalk where you got on and you would shoot, and then they would take you away so other people could do it. Well, the day we were there, it was broken. The moving sidewalk was broken, so we stayed there for about an hour and shot basketball. It was one of the better days of my life. So there you go.
Well, one of the better days of my life was attending the George Brett induction to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a huge Royals fan and a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan. So.
And did he have some pine tar on his hands, or that's a whole different story?
It was just on the edges of his face. And
okay, good. Well, tell me what you do as the library director. What is your responsibility on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it's multifaceted. I'm, my primary charge, I think, is to set the tone and have a vision for the library and how we move forward, and understanding strategically where we're trying to get, and also just being able to react to the day-to-day challenges. And certainly I'm in charge of the day-to-day operations. But, when you ask that question, the first thing that does come to mind is having a vision for where we're going and strategically positioning us to achieve that. So but, I have assistant directors that I work with, and they're in charge of different facets of the operation within the library. And of course, most people are involved with or know about their different community branches and see the great staff that we have working in those areas, in addition to the main library downtown. And we have one assistant director that's in charge of the main library downtown. So.
Okay. So, so let's start with some of the basics, and then we'll kind of get into kind of what's going on with the libraries. Right now, a lot of the libraries are closed, correct?
Right. Most of them are closed, and, it's something that we're not happy about, but it's the safest thing that we can do going forward. In fact, November 9th was an exciting day because we opened some limited locations for computer use, public computer access, and those are by appointment only.
Okay.
We don't have people wandering around the buildings, but people are coming in very specifically to use the computers.
So if somebody wants to use a computer, what do they do to get a time?
Get onto our website and call the number of the location that you want to go to, and they will set up an appointment. One of the things that's been happening in all of this for the library, just like everybody else, is that we've been concerned about PPE and social distancing and that sort of thing. So during the time period that we were actually closed totally to the public, as we were anticipating this computer use, we actually went in and reconfigured the computer areas, rewired them so that the computers are spread out. There's all kinds of coverings. Staff are not actually interacting with you in close proximity. They'll lead you to the computers where the keyboards are covered, and you'll have an hour during the week, 2 hours on the weekends to use the computers. And then when your session's through, we go in and pull the covers off the keyboards, put new covers on, and disinfect the areas.
Okay. So, and you also have, you have drive-through, the drive-through services going at the libraries, correct?
Right. The curbside's been incredibly popular. Again, we kind of held off on starting that until we felt like we had enough PPE for staff to make it a safe transaction. So yeah, I mean, it's going great guns. People put on reserves and get the books, and they're notified and call when they're coming to pick them up, or when they're at the library to pick them up. And we're about a third down in our circulation this year as compared to last year, but that's really pretty amazing when you think about the fact that we don't actually have people coming in the building and selecting books. They're reserving online and showing up in their cars, and staff are taking it out to them.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing that it's still working. So tell me, I guess, because then I want to get into some of the stuff that Ms. Busey was talking about, some of the great things that are available, and people may want to take notes because once the library's open back up, they may want to go do some of this stuff. So during this period of time, besides just doing, the drive-through and, dealing with the internet access, things like that, is there anything else going on internally within the libraries to get ready, to get ready for when you fully open back up?
Well, I guess I would say, that it's kind of all getting ready to open back up again, and this may kind of get into another question. What you're seeing a lot of work going on with is like NPL Universe, which is our online programming that's on our website. And if people haven't accessed that, they need to jump on and do it. All of our programming is online right now. So the story hours, we're showing recordings of previous salons, the courtyard concerts, that sort of thing. So what we're doing internally is trying to understand how we really ramp up the virtual access to the library programming and collections in some regard. And that takes some reworking of job skills and what's going on as far as making sure we have staff allocated in the right spots for where we get going again. Okay. The other thing that's going on that's kind of interesting, we're actually doing a complete inventory of the library's book collection. And typically it may not sound real sexy, but it's kind of an important thing that we do in libraries. But most libraries don't get a chance to do a complete inventory of their collection while you're open. And we're doing that in the background as well. So when we reopen, we'll know exactly what we have on the shelf and what isn't there.
So are you finding anything interesting as you're going through the audit?
I haven't seen the total numbers yet, but typically you see about a 10 to 15% discrepancy in what you think you have and to what you actually have when you do an inventory. So I'm sure we'll find something like that.
Well, the reason I ask is that I don't know how I found this story, but there was a review of a very important group of manuals and books that dated back to the 16th and 17th century, I think, that was somewhere here in this country. Why do I think I'm saying Carnegie Mellon, but I may be completely off.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
But it was, they did an audit. They did a review of what they had, and they found out tons of stuff that were missing. And somebody had been stealing from and the reason was interesting is that the person that was one of the culprits in it was a guy named John Schulman, which is my brother's name. So I immediately took a picture of him and said, I didn't think you went to libraries. But
Okay.
anyway, it's a very interesting story. So people may want to take a look at that.
Yeah.
So tell me, give people while all this stuff is going on and you're doing all this great stuff, tell me about some of the stuff that's in the library collection. So Carol Busey she started talking about the Votes for Women room. There obviously is civil rights room. Give people, if they haven't had a chance to do this, what is down there, and what can you find out, and what are the, if you want to go down and kind of explore once everything opens back up, what's there?
Well, Carol may have taken a little bit of my thunder, because a lot of people do think what we call the special collections area of having two of the most interesting spaces in the library. The Civil Rights Room is an incredible space that celebrates and facilitates discussion around the nonviolent civil rights movement here in Nashville in the 50s and 60s. And what's even more exciting about that is Andrea Blackman and her team there have really created dynamic programming that not only give a historical perspective, but is now moving into what we call civil rights and civil society discussions. And there are a lot of people that don't know that, for instance, that when you talk about what's going on at the library, the cadet classes from Metro Police actually take a day training or half-day training in civil rights and civil society and learn that history in that room. So if you haven't seen the room or you're not familiar with that programming, you need to maybe poke around a little bit on our website and find out and come down when the library is open. Now, the Votes for Women room that I think is receiving at least some attention, we hope it'll receive more attention when we finally open. It's been a project that's been underway for a couple of years now, and I mentioned Margaret and Jeannie and Julie earlier, but that's been a collaboration with our foundation and our staff and those folks, and we've really created a great space there. Kim Hanton, the architect, has been involved in creating that space, along with a number of other people. But when you go into that space, you're going to see not just the history of the women's suffrage movement and what happened with the 19th Amendment, but you're going to hear a lot about women's rights and voting rights per se. And all I can say is you're going to be surprised when you get in to see the final product, because it's not a static type of exhibit. It has collections in it, but it also has a lot of visual effects, and has, for instance, it has a timeline charting the women's movement that is electronic, computerized, and will be changing. So I really would advise people to get into that space. And another space that a lot of people don't know about is just our gallery. We've had a great show that just started before we had to close around cartoons, around the women's suffrage movement. But that whole space there in what I call the rotunda area, the gallery, second floor gallery, when you come in the main library, it's wonderful. Another hidden space that people may not know about is the Metro Archives, which are up on the third floor. And a few years ago, we moved the archives in from the old Green Hills branch there at the mall and located them on the third floor. And they do great research, and they're automated as well. When you walk into that space, we have touch screens that can show you documents, historical documents of Metro and Davidson County, photographs of landmarks, those sorts of things. That's something that people shouldn't miss. Another space that if you have somebody in junior high or high school that you should be focused on is Studio NPL. We have a maker space up there on the third floor that is known nationally and internationally as a place where people are involved with STEM, kids are involved with STEM and STEAM. It's mentor driven, so people can learn how to do robotics. They can learn how to get into the recording industry and learn how to use the soundboard. We even have a performance stage up there. Southern Word has been very involved in the maker space at the main library. And we do have those spaces in some of the other branches as well. So, just off the top of my head, those are ones that I immediately think of. Of course, the talking library is downtown now, and the recording studios are there. You wouldn't be able to see them, but we also have production studios that have been developed through support from the foundation. And so when people are doing the talking library, they're actually sitting down there reading the paper live or doing the recordings in some of the booths we have upstairs. But no, it just kind of goes on. And I think the space itself is just so wonderful. The courtyard itself, if you haven't really spent time in the courtyard, just as a spot to get away from things, is something that I'm always interested in seeing. My office looks out on the courtyard, and there are so many people that when the weather is even semi-decent, take advantage of just going out there and reading or eating lunch just to get away from the hustle and bustle downtown. And I think a lot of people don't think about that.
So I think about that. I could go down there right now. You actually could make some money for the library system by allowing individuals to rent out that space right now and just go sit and find something quiet.
Well, and that's something that we just started a couple of years ago, just talking about renting out space. People can, once we get open again, we actually rent that out for weddings. So people can rent different spaces within the library for a wedding, and we're starting to have people take advantage of that.
I think I did know that.
Yeah.
Well, we just had a question about
one space I didn't mention, Jim.
Okay.
Is the conference center. Again, we're not open for meetings right now, but if people are really having events that they're trying to find a good location for, whether they're profit or nonprofit, we have different scales that we charge and don't charge. We have great meeting space at that main library, and hopefully people have been in our auditorium. But that conference center is a real jewel, and it helps so many people out with the functions they want to put on that, it's a little bit grander and a little bit larger than what we have in the branches.
Yeah. So Ann had sent a note about it was at the Carnegie Center. It's on your, it was a theft. But when I talk about theft, it's a Smithsonian article. You ought to take a look at it. I'm not talking about like just several books were taken. These were like significant pieces of art.
It was serial. I vaguely remember reading the article.
Okay.
And I think it was more like a serial stealer or theft there. I mean, it was a whole process where they took it out.
Yeah, it was a head guy. It was a head guy, and he had somebody on the outside, and I don't think anybody was paying attention, and so major things were taken. Yeah.
I am not one of them, but I will tell you it is not unusual to walk into a library director's home and see a really nice wall of books, and as you start looking at them a little bit more closely, understand that they're like.
Well, I'm coming over to your house after this is over, and we're going to have a little walkthrough and see what you've got. And there was also a question in the meantime about if people wanted to volunteer, particularly for talking, the talking library. Can they do that?
Right now, we are not doing much with volunteers, but down the road when we open, certainly. Again, the social distancing, we're just trying to keep the number of people in our buildings minimal. But the talking library is up and running, and certainly if you contact them or contact me, I'll put you in touch.
Okay.
And we'll get you signed up. Again, the talking library is just a wonderful story of a badly needed service that is very much volunteer driven, and it's really critical that it continue. They used to be out in Madison, and it was really nice to get them downtown as well.
Well, go back for a second to, okay, so let's talk about the Civil Rights Room first. So you mentioned, so if people want to get information about that, they can go on to the website and find out information. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, Nashville Library. You just get into that on Google it or whatever, and once you get into our website, the website has so much information. In fact, one of our biggest challenges is how we make everything accessible because we have so much going on. But if you'll find the Civil Rights Room there fairly easily, and you just go after it, and it'll tell you about the programming and the history involved with it.
Okay. Tell me about something else that you had said, and that was, are there discussions that go on about the history of the civil rights? Are there, that's my doorbell that keeps ringing, sorry. Are there programs, are there lectures, are there other things that people can go and be a part of when the library is open?
Yes, absolutely. We have programming surrounding it. We have national figures that come in to talk about civil rights, and it may be local, it may be national, it may be international at times, and all that information is always up on the website. And also, hopefully, if you're signed up for a library card, you checked off the box to get the email messages, because we've really ramped up pushing out information about our programming in that way. So you should get that information. And, the other piece too is that as Votes for Women ramps up, we're already doing virtual programming for the schools. And as we move forward and it opens up, there will be more and more in-person programming around that room as well. And I know that just talking to the people that are planning the programming, they have some great ideas, and it's going to be pretty special stuff, including another grand opening of the building, of the space in person.
Okay. And can you give us any hints about what that may be when you actually have the grand opening of that space?
No.
You can't. It's a surprise.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. Okay.
I've heard there are some specific things we're looking at, but nothing is firmed up at this point. So.
All right. What about opportunities? You talked a little bit about the auditorium, and you've got puppet shows and other things that go on for kids right now. So if as people are entering the holiday, and then we're entering into 2021, and we'll see what happens with the schools. What opportunities do you have for kids?
Well, as far as programming, again, the NPL universe is the real gateway, because what you're seeing there, you're seeing story hours, you're seeing the professor, you're seeing Wishing Chair, all up on that platform. And while they may not be in the story hour room at the main library or in your branch story hour room, they are all right there. So that's a great place to go. And you have the opportunity to do it virtually, really at your pleasure. And so that's a good way to entertain the kids. I think it's great stuff. When you're talking about the school kids, Limitless Libraries is trying to make a difference virtually. We're loading more and more ebooks up that pertain to the school curriculum. The other thing that's really exciting, we're pushing the Wi-Fi out of our branch locations. And so what I mean by that is we're amplifying our free internet access, so that if people do not have internet access at home, they can come hang around out in our parking lots or outside the library and get into that access. So if kids are trying to do their schoolwork, and for some reason they don't have the ability to do that at home, we're trying to make it easier for them, or really just anybody. And we've been able to get that funding through State Library CARES Act. And yes, there is a dog in the background.
Yes.
our state library cares money, and also United Way cares money here in Nashville.
Well, so let me switch over because there were questions that came in during the week. Talk about the financing of the library. I know that with the Metro budget, I think everything was kept in place. So somebody asked about where does all the money come to run the libraries? And I know a lot of it comes from Metro. The foundation itself, how does all that work?
About 90% of our funding comes from Metro. And then the foundation kicks in roughly 6 or 7% of it, depending upon the year. And then we have capital money. The Metro piece I gave was operating. One of the curious something I've always found curious about our funding, we have our Metro operating budget that is focused on day-to-day operations, and it covers salaries and those sorts of things, supplies and such. But then our book budget is actually outside of that in the 4% that you're very familiar with.
Right.
And that makes it kind of challenging for us because the 4% can fluctuate a little bit. But our money for books and materials comes from that 4%. And then the things that the foundation pick up are what I really think make us a great library and are kind of value added. So when you're seeing the funding that comes in through them, you're talking about support for bringing books to life and some of the Nashville After Zone Alliance funding, a lot of the literacy programs, those sorts of things, studio. So that, they're what really create a huge difference for us.
Okay. And you mentioned the after school program, which comes out of the library. Can you tell people a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the Nashville After Zone Alliance is a program that actually originated in Mayor Dean's office. And it moved to the library, gosh, has it been 5 years ago now, 4 years ago? And what it is, it provides academic and programming support in middle schools for students. And it's very highly sought after for the students to get into. We have a number of student slots in the middle schools that we're able to support. But again, it's all about making sure that those students get a well-rounded education foremost. But the other thing people don't realize is that a lot of students that do that are in that program in partnership with the Metro schools. That may be the only meal those students receive after they get out of school. So there's a pretty hefty food component to that program so that those students are fed while they're doing their 2 hours there. So it's a pretty incredible program, and we're very proud of it. And we think it's an important piece of what we're doing.
And if people want to get more involved in that, also go to the website and you can find out.
Yeah, or just fire me an email and I can direct you to that. We have a staff on hand that provides support for that. Without going into too much detail on it, it's a contract service. So we have a provider in town that actually does the on the ground work and coordinating it. But we're also looking at moving into spaces like training after school programming people and that sort of thing. So it's a pretty broad encompassing approach to after school literacy for those students.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because we talked about the volunteer aspect of it. Obviously people can volunteer. If people do you all take book donations?
We do, but we're not taking them like we used to. We're taking them right now at the downtown library. And people can put them in the book drop and we'll sort them out. We're being kind of careful about that now, again, because of COVID and something that's kind of interesting that people have asked about. But there's debate in the library community about, and people on the health scientists in general about how long COVID can stay on surfaces and specifically pages. So, for instance, when you take a book home and you read it and you bring it back to us, hopefully, We quarantine that book for 3 days before we make it available to the public again. And right now we're just not in the business of having a lot of donations, so it's the main library particularly for now.
Speaking of that, do you all keep a list of people who have overdue books or didn't return them? And is my name on that list?
You know, one of the things that's nice about the library, we're very much about privacy.
Okay. All right. So you don't.
And I wouldn't tell you if you were, but we know who's been naughty and we know who's been nice.
So I'm just looking at the screen. Alma Sanford is on. I can see her picture. Is she on that list or no?
I couldn't tell you.
All right. All right. When I come over to
all
your
these
house
questions
later,
that I'm not allowed to tell you.
All right. When I come over to the house and look at the things that should or shouldn't be there,
yeah.
If you can give me the list, then I can check some of the people.
Okay. Okay.
All right. So what about, do you know anything about what's going on with the Church Street Park across the street?
Well, you may know more than I do about that. I think there's a misconception that the library has that space, and that space is actually
it's park space, right?
Is managed by the Parks Department.
Right.
We use it for programming occasionally. I think as discussions go forward and their developments in the future, I would think there might be an opportunity there to do more library programming out there, but it's too soon to tell. But the parks are the folks that manage that space.
Okay. All right. So we've got about 20 minutes left. I really am interested because this goes back to something I think that, again, Ms. Busey said on the call. So part of these discussions, Kent, have been really good at just generating innovative ideas, you know, giving people a chance to learn about what's going on in Nashville. Such an interesting time. The whole year has been, you know, we'll look back hopefully and go, wow, you know, we got through it, and we're better off on the other side. But there's so much stuff that's going on, whether it's divisiveness in the country, all the election stuff going on. This was such a fascinating year with a lot of the things that happened. Women's suffrage, the 100th anniversary. What Carol Busey was talking about, when she got into a discussion about the fact that there's not a centralized place, with maybe the exception of right now the library, of where you can learn about Nashville history. Okay. And so there was discussions on the call about you know, having a site here. I know she talked about the Customs House at one point. There was discussion about whether you did something at the Music City Center. We have the African American Music Museum that's getting ready to open. But the question for me is, we have so many visitors, and you would hope that besides everybody just going down to, you know, ride a pedal tavern and have fun at the honky tonks, which is fine, but there are people who, I know when I go to a city, you know, when I go to a place like, and I haven't been to Philadelphia in a long time, but I'm looking at the Liberty Bell, I want to learn about what's happened in that city. And also from a standpoint of a government official, I also like to know a little bit about their ups and downs and what they did and their innovative ideas. So having said all that, you know, if I run into tourists on the street, because I run into them and you can tell who they are. They've got either their phone or they've got a map, or they're looking for the hop on tour bus. They're looking at the state capitol. They're trying to find different places. There is so much history right underneath their feet. So if we were to direct them to the library at this point to learn, to get a better idea of some of that Nashville history, how do we direct them to you all? And is there somebody there that can say, you need to go upstairs? And then what should they look at?
Yeah, well, I think we've taken a big step towards that. I know you've visited with Tim Walker, but I mean, we have the walking tour downtown that has the app now, and we are on that. And the Civil Rights Room is mentioned on that, as well as I believe the Special Collections Room. And if people come in our building, first of all, we had started before all this began. We were actually doing tours of the main library, and there is a piece that we can hand people if they aren't there for the regular tour that talks about the building and the different collections. So we would definitely direct people in your specific situation up to the special collections area. And we have staff up there that can get them to the information they want. The other piece is that, I mentioned the archives earlier, and the archives is a treasure trove of very specific information that people can find, whether it's deeds, marriage records, those sorts of things. They actually are the official historical record of Metro government. So we have access to all of that information. So between those two, if somebody started in the special collections room and moved on to the archives, if they have more specific questions, we'd definitely be able to handle that. And kind of taking this a step further, it's not, Carol got into the discussion, it sounds like, about a Nashville Museum. Mm-hmm. And I visited about that several years ago. And I think there is a real need in this city for just a Nashville Historical Museum. We have bits and pieces at the Tennessee historical places. We have bits and pieces. It's kind of spread out all over the place. And I think there needs to be a commitment at some level of really pulling pieces of that together. And again, we kind of laugh. We have to put a little bit of a curb on what we accept as donations because people do want to give us historical things. And we actually have a closet in the back where we have Civil War sabers and muskets. And we actually have a jug from the earliest times in Nashville. But we are not equipped to be a museum at this point.
So I'd like to see that room too at some point, if I can.
It is literally a closet.
Yeah. Well, so I guess, so let me be more generic in my question. So obviously there's all kinds of information that you've got, whether it's in the library or it's in the archives. But, and I guess maybe we're all seeking the same thing. You've got a brand new Tennessee State Museum with all kinds of interesting things going on. The archives happen to be, for Metro, happen to be under your watch. And there is so much interesting history that makes up our city. And I know that when people come into Nashville, or when people talk about the growth of Nashville, they talk about, wow, I was here 15 years ago and the city has changed. It's changing even during COVID with all the hotels being built and all the stuff being built. I have a concern that the Nashville, I didn't grow up here, I'm from Johnson City, but when I moved here in the late 70s, it's such an interesting place that I learned all kinds of new things all the time. But there is so much stuff with the history with John Lewis, Diane Nash, and the women's suffrage movement, which is, look at the history right here, that again, I see tourists just walking around, they'll read the signs up, the historical markers. But the idea is, again, I'd like to direct them to places where they can learn. And so right now you kind of direct them over to the state capitol and you talk about the state museum. But again, generically, if they were to walk into the library, into the downtown library and say, I just want to learn about Nashville history. Is there information where that they can go? Are they going to be more specific towards, okay, go up to the Civil Rights Room and you can look at different books? I guess I'm looking for, is there a place that captures a little bit more in sync for somebody who's got a couple of hours and says, I'd be interested to know a little bit about what happened here?
Jim, I don't really think so, because I think well, I know what would happen if you showed up at the library and said, I want to know more about the history of Nashville. We'd take you to the special collection, and we have some resources that we could put in your hand that would be bookish type things. There wouldn't be a general display on the level of the Civil Rights Room or Votes for Women.
Mhm.
And, and maybe that's something that somebody needs to look at. But, our information will be tailored to more specific things, although we would certainly have more general histories about Nashville. I can't give an answer that would help us get where we want to be. And I know Carol has talked about this for years now, that we need something like that. And we certainly have the information there, a lot of primary information and general information, and the history of Tennessee, not just Nashville, and certainly how it relates to Nashville. But I think that's where you'd end up.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, though, or the spaces you could direct somebody to, is the Grand Reading Room. And I don't know how familiar you are with the Grand Reading Room or what you think of, but we actually have murals that go around that Grand Reading Room depicting specific pieces of Nashville history. And we also have murals outside the Grand Reading Room that would depict that history as well. And if you're looking for a visual depiction of what has happened in Nashville on a timeline basis historically, that would certainly get you there.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's where people should be sent, because that is, I've been in that room before, and I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, there's and the space in the entry area there to that Grand Reading Room. If you think about those murals and what it says about Nashville history, is pretty incredible.
Well, I'll just at some point I'll have to, when those doors open back up, I'll go back in and take a look. But I do think one of the things that I will take away from a lot of these Zoom calls this year, because with Carol as well, we talked about the city cemetery and all the interesting things that happen there, and the people who are there now. I think the idea is that we don't necessarily have we have so much history all around us that at some point we need to make sure we've got it collected and put in a place where people can see it and learn more about the city. As the city grows, we don't want to lose all the interesting things that happen and how the city developed. And we've obviously had a number of different interesting characters along the way. I was flipping stations last night, and I saw somebody was interviewing John J. Hooker, who passed away. But John J. Hooker, who ran for governor and had lots of history in Nashville, was tied in with the Kennedys. What an interesting person.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to lose that as we go on with our future.
Since you mentioned the cemeteries, you'll be interested to know we're in the process of putting up cemetery records for Davidson County. Fletch Koch and some of her folks have been working on that project for years, and it is a database that they're and a website that they're turning over to us, and we're going to have that up in the near future.
Okay.
So that's some really good information.
So I guess I know the answer to this, but if I were to convene a group of people once again and talk to Carol and Fletch Koch and those individuals that are involved with a lot of the historical stuff in Nashville, I assume I could get you to come to the meeting too, to talk about what we do. And,
absolutely, you'd have me and Ken Feith, the head of our archives, for sure.
Okay. Well, we'd have to do it in some place outside of the library because it's not open at this point. But I think I just think we have such a wealth of history, and I don't want to lose that. And I think we should. I think we should with as many people that come visit here, I'd love to give them an opportunity to learn more about.
I think you're right. You're absolutely right.
Unique stuff that we've got. So I'm looking through my list of questions. I think we've hit almost everything. I'm checking my chat box. I know there was a question about reaching out. We've talked a little bit about access to technology to promote engagement. I know you've got facilities that you can drive up to and get access to the web. And you can also, you've got, if people want to reach out, they can reserve space to come into the library. But it's being done very carefully and very cautiously to make sure that everybody stays safe. You had, let me see, here's another question. The status of the Donaldson Library.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the go-ahead from Metro on that because I believe they are close to it. They have not already awarded the design construction contract for that. And with the hold on Metro finances, that has just been sitting there waiting to go forward. And I think as soon as we're given the go on that, we'll get going. But we have a very strong concept design for downtown Nashville, trying to help generate a center for Donaldson there. Anyway, I'm excited about that. We also have a number of other projects that we're trying to move forward based on our master facilities plan. We're looking at, we need a new Hadley, Park Branch badly. We need Richland Park needs to either be renovated or totally redone. Thompson Lane, we have a whole list of projects that we need to get after. And we've called them out and we have a pretty good idea of what we need to do with each of the locations that we've listed. But, again, as you know, it's the funding piece and the capital funding piece that's kind of holding us back right now. But we hope to get to them, and I think we will eventually. But Donaldson's an exciting project that we're ready to go on. Jeff Syracuse has been a big proponent of moving that forward.
And Jeff Syracuse probably should have a statue of him put into that library when it's done, because he's a major proponent. A lot of times that's all he would talk about. So yeah, Jeff Syracuse, a great council member from that area. A couple more questions. The Libby app. What is the Libby app? Do you know?
I'm not as familiar with that as I should be.
Okay. Well, so I know who asked the question, and I'll go back and try to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
It's used for overdrive.
Oh, it's the overdrive books. Yeah, we're about ready to load that up. So
okay.
Yeah. Can I make a quick comment here while I'm thinking about it? I
Sure.
mentioned this earlier. I see Joyce Searcy, one of our board members, is online with us here, and Joyce has been one of our great board members. And a lot of folks don't think about the fact that we do actually have a pretty dynamic library board engaged in what we're doing all the time. And those are important folks, just like the Parks Board and other boards in town.
Okay, so that's good. I had another question that came in about the Revolutionary War and whether we have, besides that stuff that you have in your closet somewhere in the library, do we have any rooms that's designated or that's set for the Revolutionary War?
No, we have plenty of information regarding that, but there's not a specific room.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we got through everybody's questions. I'm looking to make sure. I do think that what we should do is pull together maybe right after the holidays, pull together a group of people to talk about the history, making sure that we preserve and have a place to showcase the ups and downs, the incredible history that is in this city that I think most people don't know. And, I became aware of a lot of it by being on the city cemetery board and just being amazed at what was over there. I just think that's important to do. And then obviously I work downtown and I walk around the Hermitage Hotel and I walk down Fifth Avenue. And there is, I'm walking on history, and I think it's important for people to know. So
I think,
we
yeah,
may take advantage of you, Kent, and put you to work on something like that.
love to do that. I think the last time there were serious conversations about that, Mayor Dean was trying to put together an encyclopedia of Nashville, and Carol was very much involved in that. And at the same time, they were looking at funding to restore Fort Nash down on the river. And that's the last time there was a serious conversation.
Well,
Let's inject here real quickly.
sure.
I see Tina in the chat is talking more about Libby. And Overdrive, if you're not familiar with it, is the platform that we have all of our ebooks on. That's a pretty critical piece of our ebook delivery. So.
Well, so obviously you have lots of resources available through your website, lots of stuff that you can use. That's good. So if anybody has any questions about it, get access to the website at the library. And then Kent, your email address is kent.oliver@nashville.gov.
That's
right?
it.
All right. So if you have any questions about the library, or you want to volunteer or do anything, and you can get in touch with Kent. Kent, thank you for being our guest today. I certainly appreciate it. I'll be over at your house a little bit later to do a little inspection. To see what's going on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I know that if you check the chat box, there was an interesting story in the Smithsonian about a heist at a facility in Pennsylvania. I think it was in Pittsburgh, where a lot of stuff was taken, and it took an audit to find that out. And they're trying to deal with that at this point. And again, the reason I thought it was interesting was that the library here is doing an audit while we're shut down for COVID. And the person that was on the outside of that situation was a guy named John Schulman. And that is my brother's name, but we are not involved in that heist. We're not involved in that, so just remember that. And next week will be, I believe, our last program before the end of the year. We are going to invite a very well-known figure that hopefully all of you have some idea who it is. He's coming in, he'll be zooming in from the North Pole. Santa Claus will be my guest. So if you have kids that would like to get on and ask questions, I'm sure Santa will do his best to answer anything that you may throw at him. So it should be an interesting time. We have a council meeting coming up on Tuesday night. That will be our last council meeting of the year. And as we head into, again, what is right now kind of a gloomy outside, but it's supposed to be warm outside, everybody be safe. And those numbers are very, very high. Take precautions, practice good safety and health protocols. Everybody be safe, and hopefully we will see everybody here next week. Everybody have a good week. Kent, thanks again for being our guest.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody stays safe.
All right. I'll be in touch soon. All right.
Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye.